Hey, buddy.
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Oh, not too bad. First time on the live without a hat, so showing off
I
my
was wondering. I
isolation
was
hair.
like, well.
Well, you don't really have much hair there, so you're nice and tight and tidy.
No, exactly. That's yeah. You don't want to see me with normal hair, so
No, it's a good look. So how's it going?
it's going well. Yeah, to be honest, it's sometimes I'm wondering if it's going to a little too well in this isolation because I don't really want to go back and face reality. But so far, so good. How you doing?
Yeah, to be honest, it's in some ways it's kind of the same. Like, we've kind of settled into a bit of a groove.
Yeah,
The whole homeschooling piece has been a bit of a challenge, like more and more for my wife, and me trying to work and that sort of stuff. But other than that, like when we do have those moments, and those times when we get to kind of hang out as a family and all that kind of stuff, it's been awesome. So
that's
yeah,
great.
yeah. So
Good.
what'd you get up to today?
Today, I actually met up with Holly. We did a little mobility session because both of us have been slacking quite a bit for a little while, and then
Nice.
made some dinner. Went for a walk with the partner. Get some sunshine here, which I know we have the advantage of compared to some of our friends back east.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and then yeah, just we've got two foster cats right now that are keeping us, I guess, entertained is the word, but constantly cleaning broken things up after them. But yeah, it's been good. It's been good. And then yeah, just connecting with old friends that I haven't had the chance to connect with in a while. So yeah, it's been a good day.
Cool. Yeah, yeah, the weather here today was actually super nice, but I think we're getting what everybody in Ontario and BC and stuff like that got, or sorry, Ontario and Quebec got today. We're getting that overnight and tomorrow. We're getting some snow, I think, and all that kind of stuff.
It's crazy. I saw that. Yeah, for some of my friends in Calgary were saying they're expecting some more. And so yeah, right now 11 degrees and sunshine. I can't complain.
Yeah, no, that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
All right, Matt. So not a ton of people watching. At least from my followers would know you, just because you've been kind of outside of the sort of Sport Institute network for a little bit.
Yeah.
So why don't you give us a little bit of an idea of kind of where you're working right now and what you're up to?
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, as the point of this conversation, my history has been as a strength and conditioning coach for probably about the last 15, 20 years or so. And then just over the last 2 years, kind of since uh, after the 2018 Pyeongchang Games, I sort of pivoted in a bit of a different direction to head towards mental performance. So
Hmm.
just over the last year, just been about a year and a bit, I started a Master of Counseling to really try and move towards that things. And to be honest, once I started in there, kind of took me on even a different tangent to as much as I still want to continue to work with athletes, really working on the mental health side of things. And for me, yeah, sort of two things now. I'm starting up an internship where we're actually going to be offering free telehealth counseling for mental health for people who are dealing with, COVID right
Hmm.
now. And yeah, so that experience where I'm hoping to sort of blend my previous career, my new career is my supervisor does a lot of trauma work. So really interesting to see sort of the brain body connection sort of at, I guess, a bit of a different level than what we see, as strength and conditioning coaches. So
Sure.
literally had the internship start up last week, and then yeah, other thing is, just as some of our friends know, my partner and I are expecting in August, so just trying to get everything in line there. And as you well know, threefold what those challenges might be. So just hoping to be as prepared as possible.
Yeah, you're the second guest I've had on here in the last couple of weeks that has been expecting a child. Dana Agar Newman is expecting as well. He's out
No
on
way, I didn't know that. I'm
yeah
gonna
he,
have to reach out to him. Congrats
yeah
to him.
yeah he's out on Vancouver Island, as you know. But so we were talking about, there's really no way to actually be like ready. You can you can do everything, you can do all this stuff, but once it happens, it kind of happens, and then you just go with it, and you'll be all right. Many.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that coming from somebody in the know, but no, I'll be honest, it's one of my life dreams. So, as much as I think I'm prepared, I know there's going to be some twists and turns there, but
Always.
no, it's definitely a challenge we're ready to take on. So, I think the biggest question right now is just depending on when they delivery room or not. So,
Right. Yeah. When's the due date?
August 10th.
Oh, yeah. So you're on like the kind of cusp there, maybe, maybe not kind of thing.
Maybe, maybe not. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, we're going with some midwives, but the idea of a home birth isn't quite in our realm. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, no, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So always, we're getting lots of the softball girls signing on right now. Jay Sal's waving. Sarah Groenwagen's giving us the hard eyes. uh, oh, there we go. One of my old interns who's in Australia now, Rob, or he's from Australia, but Rob Jameson, he's signed on. He's giving us a wave, so that's nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, but anyway, so we usually try to go back a little bit further. Like I've really, and for you, I don't think I know any of these answers, so I'm super excited to hear about them. So if you want to just go into a little bit, further into your past, kind of like where you're from,
Yeah.
where you went to high school, university, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, perfect. So, yeah, Victoria boy, born and raised. Yeah, went to Oak Bay High, big rugby school. Soccer was my main thing there, and yeah, I guess going back, leading into sort of the strength coach career was actually between graduating high school and heading to university. So I did an undergrad in psychology at UVic. And it was actually the summer after high school. I ended up tearing my ACL playing a soccer game, which was, again, looking back now, 20 years later, it was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, which of course didn't feel like it at the time. But yeah, that's where I actually got connected after a couple of bad experiences with some, physio rehab things that didn't quite go too well.
Right.
My first year in university, I actually just after seeing a few physios, ended up getting referred to a strength coach, which in the year 2000 was kind of a foreign term in Canada. And it just so happened to be a guy that I'm sure a lot of people on here are familiar with, Dr. Jeremy Shepard. He didn't have
Yeah.
the doctor in front of his name at that time, but so yeah, I started working with him a little bit, and I kind of pivoted from doing my psych degree. I finished up sort of all my requirements there and decided I think I wanted to be a physiotherapist. So that's when I started doing all of the like biomechanics, physiology, all those sorts of things at UVic. And then at that time, I was really, really lucky. I just started working as, a lot of us did, as a gym attendant at the UVic gym
Hmm.
there, just doing a little bit of personal training. And then another name, probably the number one mentor, I'd say, in my career, Tyler Goodale. Met Tyler, became friends with him, learned just a ton from him. He opened up some doors for me there. And so I guess this would have been 2007. I'd actually got accepted to go down and do a master's in physiotherapy down at University of Queensland.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and This is actually the same time that PICE, so Pacific Institute for Sport Excellence in Victoria, was finally coming to fruition. And so Tyler, being with the CSI Pacific at the time, sort of let me know about a potential job there. So that's when he kind of helped me pivot from doing the Masters of Physio to introducing me to Edith Cowan's program for the Masters of Strength and Conditioning there.
Cool.
So yeah, one of the great things is, as I know a lot of people, throughout the world with that program, is you can do most of it by distance. So that allowed me to take a position as a strength coach at PICE when it was opening up in 2008, which was probably one of the best / most stressful experiences of my entire career in life. And started up there working primarily with, youth and sort of general population, some of the sort of provincial level teams, but the CSI Pacific being pretty small at that, I think they only had two strength coaches, Tyler Goodale, and then another great coach, Cam Burtwell, who's still based out of
Hmm.
Victoria. He's got a CrossFit gym now that he's been doing a lot of good stuff there. But yeah, so they were always short on staff there. So anytime they would go traveling with a team, they needed somebody to sub in, and great opportunity for me. So after a couple of years there, sort of helping those guys out with at the time it was basically the men's national rugby team, 15s. Diving, swimming, and rowing were the primary sports there, which I know are still kind of some of the big
Yeah.
ones there. Um, Yeah, I got an opportunity to move full time with the CSI, and so this would have been now 2010, right after the Vancouver games. They announced that freestyle snowboard was going to be coming into the next game, so for 2014 Sochi, and so to Tyler's, I got to give him credit. One of the things he realized about me was, as much as I'm lacking on the scientific side of strength and conditioning as my strengths, I was pretty laid back when it came to my interactions with athletes, and seemed to make pretty good connections there. So knowing that freestyle snowboard was a bit of an interesting one, one of those sports that hadn't really bought into the whole sports science side. Got an opportunity to start working with that team, which I don't think there's too many times where you sort of handed a brand new team with like multiple Olympic medal potentials, managed to start working with them. And I guess reflecting back of where we were at the time, I was not referred to as a strength and conditioning coach because they were so worried about scaring the athletes. Sorry, they weren't athletes at the time; they were riders at the time. But so I spent my first year officially as rest and recovery specialist snowboard, where literally our goal was to get to not drink as much beer, and so.
Matt, you kind of cut out a little bit. What did you say you were referred to as by them?
A rest and recovery specialist.
Oh, wow. Okay,
so
nice.
The term strength and conditioning coach was not in. So I've got some lanyards from some different competitions where literally my title is rest and recovery specialist. So
that's funny.
So it wasn't much of lifting weights or getting into the weight room. It was literally like let's do some basic things that might help you guys do a little bit better on performance. And so as you well know, after that first year, it pretty much turned into about 6 months of the year on the road. Had the opportunity to work with, one of the best experiences I had, I guess, sort of leading into the 2012 games, was working with John Herdman's women's national soccer program. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people know Caesar, the amazing physiologist there. So got to work with him and learn a lot from him. And then leading into Sochi, I got picked up full-time by Canada Snowboard, and spent pretty much all my time up until 2018 games working with them. So and then as I say, I just sort of pivoted in the last couple of years to head more towards this side of things.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's funny. I spent a little bit of time with Jeremy Shepherd, like you mentioned him earlier, who's now working with Canada's freestyle snowboard team. And, Jared talks about, he's not referred to as a strength conditioning coach. Still, he'd be an off-snow coach. Right? So that's it's still sort of there. And he refers to them as the dude sports. So, he came from surfing, and he's now working with freestyle snowboard. So it's sort of a perfect match.
Perfect transition, yeah. And I think that's one of those, those weird ways the world works, from me getting sort of rehabbed by him 20 years ago to he ended up being one of my, adjunct profs for Edith Cowan when he was down there. So I got to connect with him when I went down for my practicum. And then, perfect transition as I was ready to sort of, move on from snowboarding. He came in, and, who better could you get than Jeremy Shepherd to come into that. So, one of the great things, and I guess sort of for me, that was kind of taught me or told me that I was pivoting at the right time was, I got to thank Jeremy and the rest of that crew because, he had taken over full time as a strength coach by the time the Pyeongchang games came around. And so they decided to take me along still, just because of the connections I built with the athletes, in that program. And, I do feel like I provided some value there, but it was really one of those things where, Jeremy, again, I can't even compete with that guy when it comes to his S&C knowledge, but his recognition that I still had something to bring to that program. I'll always be thankful for him to have that opportunity to go to that second games.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, it's kind of interesting. Like there's a little bit of this yin and yang. I don't know if debate's the right word necessarily, but conversation in the strength conditioning or performance coaching world around, the art versus the science. And, there's the group that, it's all about connection and it's all about the art, and then there's the group that's it's all about the science and it's all about the numbers and proving that you're, show your worth that way. So I kind of wonder, like, listening to you talk so far, your thoughts on, you know, do you think your experience with the freestyle snowboarders has kind of led you to the path that you're going down in terms of the counseling side, or just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, no, great question. No, I think that's exactly it. To me, it was one of those things where I learned from some of the best sports scientists around. And, I would see, despite their skills on both the art and the science side, there's just certain athletes that just didn't quite, buy in the same way. And, I'd heard, from other sports, not necessarily strength and conditioning coaches, where the term, that athlete's uncoachable.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that always kind of bothered me a little bit. I was just always in that place where I'm like, they're obviously motivated, especially at the level that, you and I have had the opportunity to work with. There's a reason they're there, and
Mm-hmm.
they've obviously got goals. They've obviously got ambitions. They've obviously got a great skill set. And so to me, working with snowboard and knowing that I couldn't rely just straight on the, I could convince them that, okay, here's the perfect, program for you that's all of a sudden going to increase your chances of winning, hopefully by this much. It really came down to building that trust. And I think that that's one of those things as important as that is in, a counseling relationship. As a strength and conditioning coach, we have athletes, not just their physical bodies, we're responsible for, but to a certain extent, we play a part in them achieving their hopes and dreams if we do a good job. And in the reverse, if we don't do a good job, who knows? And so
Mm-hmm.
working with snowboard, I think it was one of those things where how much of the value, and again, I give credit to Tyler for this, but, just going out there and I mean, shoveling snow, helping to build jumps, doing all those things that made them realize that I was there for them. And it wasn't, me sitting on my pedestal here, just being like, oh, I got to deal with these, kids, understanding that they may have needed different things at that time than just, me helping them squat more or whatever it might be. And so I think one of the great things, and I think we take this for granted sometimes as strength coaches that do get to travel, is oftentimes you don't actually get to see your athletes, do their thing. They come into our environment, which is not their, a lot of them love the weight room, as we know, but a lot of them, their home is on the field, is on the ice, is on the snow. And
Mm-hmm.
so getting to see them in their element and understanding, what it takes for them to perform, really allowed me to then, I think, do a better job when then they came into my environment. And so knowing that with a lot of them, yeah, it was all about building that trust, because there's such a culture, their sport is so culture based to the point that they were very worried that, they didn't want to see it go the way of, here's the specific scoring criteria. They didn't want to lose the style, the fun of what it was. And so I think when all of a sudden they had the structure put on them of, okay, well, now you got to start eating properly. You got to start going to the gym. You got to start, drug testing and all these things that are expected in many other sports. That can be a very off-putting thing. And so I learned that what I could do and how I could approach those athletes was so different than, rugby players or rowers who just had grown up with that. And so I really felt like I had to sort of change my skill set a little bit, or improve my skill set to try and help them out in the way that they needed at that time. And, knowing now where that sport has come in 10 years, like, yeah, they are true athletes. You can't do what they're doing without it. But at the time, definitely, if I had come in with my normal standard approach that I do with other athletes, I probably would have been, kicked to the curb within a week.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a massive, massive lesson, that some people learn the hard way. So hopefully anyone that's listening to this, either now or in the future, that gets that opportunity or goes down that path, you have to realize that you can't have the same approach with everybody. Even within a team, you can't have the same approach with every person within the team. Right. And so I think that's super important.
No, you're absolutely right. And, I think the one thing that I guess probably extended my longevity in that career was, you know, as I sort of moved up and was able to put sort of, you know, teams together of strength coaches, whether it was the Oval or, you know, working at level 10, which, you know, some people know here in Vancouver, or even with, you know, my colleagues at the CSI, was, you know, getting to work around such brilliant, smart people. I had always been under that mindset, you know, make your weakness your strength. And, you know, as much as I still believe in that, when I have a team, you know, there's no point in me going out and trying to pretend like I love doing the analytics and the statistics and all these things. And, you know, some of the great coaches I've had the opportunity to work with, and, you know, and you included, like, to me, the ability to work with your softball team is the best of both worlds for me, because, you know, I as I pivoted in learning more about counseling stuff, I just can't keep up on the latest and greatest, you know, research for strength and conditioning.
Right, yeah.
But I know that I can still always rely on the art of coaching that I feel like I've, you know, been working on for the last couple of decades. And so when I can take, you know, your program and do my best to try and implement, you know, what I think you're trying to get out of it, yeah, I think that's extended my career a number of years past its expiry date. So I'm thankful for that, for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, adding you to the team this last year and a bit has been huge, and the athletes that have been had the pleasure to work with you definitely let me know it as often as they can. So I know that, you know, that's something that you bring to the table, and I think that's a huge thing. And, you know, you, as someone who kind of has that as a strength, and going and, you know, furthering your education in that area, I think that also says a lot about you in the sense that you're making a strength an even stronger point for yourself. So I think that's awesome.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. And yeah, that's the hope, you know, and it is kind of interesting starting from square one and, you know, experiencing some of those same feelings as I did 20 years ago getting into this, you know, that imposter syndrome of like, I don't know what I'm talking about, you know, and realizing that, yeah, you know, again, there's experience there, there's knowledge there, but yeah, I think as anybody in our position, or, you know, anybody who's ambitious knows, the minute you think you know it all, you're done.
Yeah, absolutely. That growth mindset is huge.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's pivot a little bit. I sometimes go into a rapid fire round, and
Yeah.
it's taken us 23 minutes to get there, but that's okay. Okay, first question. I saw you take a sip of something. What are you drinking today?
So I wasn't sure if you were joking or not. So I'm not much of a drinker these days, but I decided to socially distance myself, and so Phillips, which is a Victoria, one of the earlier sort of craft brews there, and realizing as I've taken 2 sips right now, I feel like I'm feeling something already, and I'm like, oh man, these 6.5%, you know, this isn't the old Bud Light right now. So
Is there a purple unicorn on that?
Electric Unicorn White IPA is what I'm drinking right now. So if you can find this one, it's definitely a go-to for me.
Very nice. I usually show, this is a new one. I haven't drank this one yet. This is a Garrison Brewery, which is a local Halifax brewery. It's right on the waterfront. It's called
Yeah.
Hoppy Boy.
Nice.
which is also, it's an American IPA, 6.5 as well. I haven't gotten past the neck yet, really, so we've still got some time.
I don't know what it's looking like out there for you. And as I say, I don't go to liquor stores often, but when I went in there, it was cleared out today. So
Was it?
I was lucky I was able to find what I wanted.
My neighbor had been at his cottage all week, and he came back and he was kind of throwing a bunch of wood. He was going to give me some wood to use for campfires and stuff.
Yeah.
So he was throwing a bunch of wood on my front lawn, and we were talking a little bit, and he said that he drove by one of the alcohol stores around here, and he said the lineup was like around the corner, and it was, I guess it's the long weekend and stuff will be closed and all that, I guess.
Fair enough.
Crazy
Well,
enough.
hey, coping mechanisms, you know, as much as I'm a counselor and, you know, try and work on that sort of things, we've all got our go-tos, you know, and so everything in moderation, right?
Yeah. Speaking of coping mechanisms, and next question, what are you binge watching on Netflix or other things like that?
So the one that there's 2 that we've gotten into. So with my partner Justine and I, we've been watching. I managed to get, I think, to season 3 of Lost, like way back in the day, and so now finally we've rewatched up to season 3 and just started new on that. And then the other one, so that one's on Amazon Prime, but the other one is Norseman on Netflix.
Okay, yeah.
So it's basically, for those who haven't seen it, it's like, you know, it's in the Viking days, 500, 600 years ago, but it's funny because it's sort of like, you know, they're talking about having values exercises and, you know, this authoritarian leadership. So it's sort of, you know, modern day concepts applied to old school Viking days. So yeah, that's been it. And then I'll be honest, the amount of YouTube I watch, I've been watching a ton of cooking shows, and, you know,
Okay.
here's my weird one that I know that people are the people that know me know this one, but I'm pretty into cats. Like literally the animals. So I'm the guy who you're going to see watching stupid cat videos on YouTube, and I got no shame about it.
So that means you probably have not watched Tiger King. Or
so that's the one just keeps on coming up on
yeah.
after every show we watch. And so we haven't gotten there yet, but everybody's talking about it. So I feel like that's going to be probably next on the list. Have you watched it?
I have watched it, yeah. I started watching it with my wife, and she shut her down pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I slowly chipped away and did finish it up. And it's just it's like a crazy mosaic of the state of some parts of the world, I guess, in terms of the type of people that are out there and what they do, and nuts.
When I first saw it come up, I thought it was, like a fiction, like, parody. And then the more that I heard about it, I'm like, man, this guy was real. So yeah, my curiosity's definitely been piqued. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, actually, what are you reading right now or listening to book wise?
Yeah. So reading, actually, I just got it in the mail a couple of days ago. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. So pretty famous book. You might have heard of it. But basically it's all about, how we have started to realize in the last sort of 20 years, how, the body stores psychological stresses, trauma, these sorts of things. And so, yeah, as I say, for me, where I sort of see why that one's interesting is just sort of how I've seen, and this is coming from my own experience with injuries, about, how we can physically rehabilitate the body. But if we don't address some of our psychological issues, whether it's with injury, whether it's with, something bigger than that. So yeah, it's all about, neuroscience, these sorts of things, but it's a pretty, thus far, I'm only 2 chapters in, but a pretty flowy read so far. So from what I read thus far, I definitely recommend it.
So The Body Keeps the Score.
The Body Keeps the Score. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It's a Dutch author, something Vander, but it was like a New York Times bestseller. But yeah, just all about sort of an introduction into the psychology, the psychological / somatic connection.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, last question in this rapid fire round is going to be what was for dinner and who cooked out of you and Justine?
So dinner right now, and so
it's now, right?
It's yeah, exactly. So coming up, so actually going with some I made sort of like used turmeric, but like kind of a East Indian chicken thighs with quinoa. I'll probably have rice because I need my carbs in there, and then gonna do some broccoli and green beans, try it out on the barbecue. We'll see.
Nice.
And, so yeah, I'm cooking that one. We're pretty good switching back and forth. She's so even though she's a tiny little girl, she got diagnosed with gestational diabetes. So she's pretty strict on the meals that she's able to have. So luckily for me, with my physical activity dropping significantly, I've been eating a lot better than I would have otherwise. So yeah, that's on the menu for tonight.
Nice. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so one of the other things that I like to do is ask people, what are you up to outside of the weight room? In a normal scenario, not necessarily now when you can't really do much, but what are some of your hobbies outside of the weight room and school?
Yeah. So to be honest, and this is, I guess, kind of mixing a little bit of my work with my hobbies, but I still play video games. I'm the guy who started, I do think I started on an Atari back in the early mid 80s. And so, dating myself there, but, so I still play some online, Call of Duty. And my excuse for that is it's just research for my, my mental performance work with esports athletes.
Yep.
A whole nother debate right there is, the terminology of esport athlete. But, so a little bit of that there. Now the weather's been great. As my old knees have started to fail me a little bit, I've been doing a lot more biking than, I ever have in the past. So, biking was always just a means from point A to point B, but now I'll actually try and go on some decently long rides once in a while. And then, beyond that, I think just taking the opportunity, because as you well know, when you're in school, you just have so many assignments, so many things to read. Now actually trying to catch up on some of the books, some of the readings that I want to do for myself, Right. And so, yeah, some of them overlap, like what I'm currently reading, but, catching up on, on some of the things that I've been putting off. I keep on ordering books and they just sit on my shelf as I read through all my textbooks. And so now I've got to stack of 5 or 6 books that I'm hoping to, or just been able to finally crack into. So yeah, other than that, I mean, I think this is the funny thing is all the memes have gone back and forth. My life's not too much different than it was before. I'm pretty much a homebody and happy to hang around and, you know, do my mindfulness and those sorts of things. So yeah, nothing too exciting really.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Well, you did bring something up there that I wanted to make sure that we touched on before we got off the chat, and that's your involvement with esports. So I'd be super interested to hear like how that got started, what what you started off by doing with that group, and then what you're doing now, and what's the day to day like in that world.
Yeah. So, you know, again, coming from being a player, I think probably 6 or 7 years, I think it was kind of predicated by the fact that I was, you know, at the time when I was traveling so much, I never felt it was worthwhile to, you know, pay for cable TV. So I just, you know, had the internet. So all I had to watch when I'd come home or be on the road was just YouTube. And so I, you know, sort of went over that point where I started watching more like other people play video games than I was actually playing myself. And so I think it sort of started off where I was like, well, you know, if you got these pros, like I'd love to learn some tips of what they're doing to try and, you know, get myself better, that whole sort of, you know, growth mindset. And so I started watching some of these games and then, you know, just really, you know, for the mainstream, it's still, you know, I guess what is your definition of mainstream? But when you look at mainstream sports, you know, it was one of those things where it was this sort of niche little, you know, is it going to go away type of thing. But I started delving into, you know, the actual, I guess, channels of what you would see of within it, and just started to see how big, you know, this was around the world, knowing that in places like South Korea, you know, it's you're an absolute superstar, and they have been for 10 years if you were playing some of these games. And so I was just intrigued there and understanding that you know, as you started to see the amount of money that started to go into these franchises, teams, whatever it might be. So sort of the actual involvement kind of happened with two sort of things. One was, I don't know if you might recognize the name Chris Overholt, or I think
So
CEO of
you cut out
Chris
there for a
Overholt.
sec, Matt.
Yeah,
Maybe
so
just repeat that last
pause on there. I don't know if you can hear me. I see the loading screen.
time. There
Oh,
we
there we
go.
go.
We're
Back.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. So Chris Overholt, who used to be, I think, was the CEO of the Canadian Olympic Committee.
Okay. Yeah,
So
sounds
a
familiar.
couple of years back, when I saw that he had stepped down from that position to start working with Toronto's esports franchise, it was kind of like okay, maybe this guy knows something
Yeah.
that other people don't know. And so at that same time, it just so happened that there's a thing called it's called the Gaming Stadium in Richmond. So it's actually, you know, 3 blocks away from the Richmond Oval there. And so they just sort of done, you know, their press release of what they were coming out with. So I just, you know, literally sent a quick little email to their CEO, and, you know, we met up and I sort of said what I did and, you know, where I was heading. And so we started sort of talking from there. And then beyond that, so that one was more in sort of the grassroots side of things. So a lot of what they were doing there was the idea to offer, you know, summer camps and, you know, as and trying to establish within school systems, and, you know, still a ways to go, but actually start to set up. Oh, sorry, I just saw somebody put up Bessel van der Kolk. That's the book. Perfect.
Thank you. That's my aunt, actually.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. And so yeah, they were really trying to get some grassroots things going. And so my thoughts on that side was, you know, as I'm sure you've seen, like, beyond getting athletes bigger, faster, stronger, you know, the amount of confidence you can build, the social skills, communication. So to me, I sort of saw this opportunity where maybe I could take some of that skill set that I had from strength conditioning and reach a different population. And, you know, I really like working with youth and knowing that, you know, how many of the athletes, young athletes that I was working with, you know, what's the thing they would be talking about when they came in? It'd be Fortnite or, you know, League of Legends or something. And so yeah, sort of started up with them a little bit. And then that led me to just in the last couple of months, as I've sort of moved towards the mental performance side of things, out of Fortius, which is in Burnaby, which I'm sure you're aware of, high performance training center there. They have this, you know, traditional sports team that comes in. they've basically tried to create a system for, you know, an integrated support team
Mm-hmm.
for esports athletes. And so they've actually, and I'm not that I'm working with them, you know, maybe one day, but so they've signed contracts with, you know, a couple of big pro teams. And so, you know, literally you've got these athletes at Fortius who, so like the Vancouver Titans, which is the Aquilinis who own the Canucks, they bought this team, which, if rumors are true, you know, it costs $30 or $35 million to buy
Wow.
that esports franchise. And then the Seattle Surge, which is the Call of Duty team. And so these athletes come up and they're going to the weight room. They're, you know, seeing a dietitian. They're, you know, they're literally starting. It's funny because it's almost exactly where freestyle snowboard was when I started up with them. You know, it was that whole, I don't want to be a jock, I'm a, you know, video game player type of thing. And so, so the one initiative that we've got with sort of one little pro league is basically because of COVID coming up, they
Mm-hmm.
want some resources to help with actually more on the mental health side of things as opposed to strictly performance. So, you know, even though we just assume that every video game player's happy to be in their parents' basement doing nothing, you know, these are regular guys and girls who have the same, you know, likes as we do. They want to go out and be social and everything else. So, so yeah, right now what we're currently working on is just trying to create sort of some resources to help them continue to work on their craft, but also just like the rest of us deal with these unprecedented, weird, you know, socially distant times.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so it's still a lot of question marks when it comes to the whole where esports is going and, you know, what that might turn into. I'm still, you know, there's still those rumors that it's going to be in the Olympics one of these days, and but no, that one's one of those ones where I don't know if that would ever necessarily be my, like, you know, full on, but I'm really fascinated by the space right now just because there's so much room for growth.
Yeah, no, that does seem super interesting, and like you said, it is one of those things that are still out there that people are talking about. You know, whether that's going to become, you know, a lot more mainstream, and B, possibly even, you know, to the level of the Olympics and things like that. So that's interesting that you're in there, and it's pretty cool that you're in there on basically the ground level, at least in Canada. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely lucky there. And like you said, who knows where it's going to go? And, you know, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of debate in the future of, you know, whether or not this is a sport, whether or not it should be in the Olympics. But as we well know, oftentimes the Olympics is, when it comes down to it, it's a business. And, you know, if
Mm-hmm.
people are going to watch people play video games, well, I wouldn't be surprised if we see it in there by, you know, 2024. So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're probably coming close to the end of our chat, and this is usually where I'll ask if there's anyone that's watching that wants to ask Matt any questions or ask us any questions. You guys can go ahead. So you kind of talked to me a little bit already. You told me you're having a sip right now. You told me that you're not a big drinker. If you were to go out, you know, for a nice dinner and, you know, you were going to have a drink of choice, what would that be?
Right now, to be honest, with the weather feeling warm right now, at least where I'm at, I would definitely be probably hitting up a nice mojito on a patio somewhere if I could, and then depending on how many of those, the next morning would definitely be hitting up a nice traditional Canadian Caesar to hair the dog myself out of out of the leftovers. So yeah, that probably be my go-to for sure.
Nice. Actually, I do have one more question for you. Because of our kind of softball connection, it made me think of it. I brought this up a couple weeks ago, for some reason, and you know, I have a experience with one of my first training camps with the softball team. I was out shagging balls, and I pretty much blew up my hamstring. Like, it was purple all the way up and down within a couple days.
Yeah.
So you know, it was an inadvertent way to show some vulnerability and maybe to, you know, at least make an impression
Yeah.
of some kind on the athletes. So I'm just wondering if you have any, you know, kind of embarrassing or those types of stories from your experience.
No, you know, I think I've been pretty lucky there. The one thing I'll say though is, and I would have had a tough time admitting this a couple years ago, but now, you know what, the number of athletes, and it's not just, you know, at the Olympic Games after a big celebration, the number of athletes that I have sat there and shed tears with, you know, whether it's been because somebody got injured, whether it's, you know, the Olympics being canceled or postponed, whether it's, you know, failing to qualify for something, you know, to me, that's one of those things that I would consider as a vulnerability, but I also think that,
Absolutely.
you know, I've flipped that in my mind to, you know what, I'm a human being. And to me, there's strength in showing that vulnerability as much of a paradox as that might seem. And so, I think I've often told athletes that, you know what, I've probably cried in front of more athletes than, you know, most coaches will in a lifetime. And I feel like I got a lot more years and a lot more tears to shed. But no, to me, that's one of those things that I think hopefully humanizes me, you know, and makes them realize, you know, a lot of times we're seen as you know, no pun intended, the strong guys, you know, and we're the ones that are leading the way. But to me, the amount that I've learned from the athletes, the amount that I get from those athletes, and I think that's one of the big things I've really noticed is, as much as I can say I'm an introvert, not being able to connect with, you know, athletes on a regular basis and not having that, you know, I get my energy from coaching, you know, every time I can be in a bad mood or, you know, just for whatever reason. And the moment I leave a session with an athlete, I just feel so much better about myself. And so, yeah, just that's one of those realizations that I've really missed that. So I know I went on a tangent from your original question there,
No,
but
no,
that's where I ended up.
yeah, no, nice. It's funny, man. Like I can kind of remember 10 or 12 years back, you know, somebody in sort of a more of a administrative type position, talking about how sport coaches might be offended or not take kindly to us referring to ourselves as strength and conditioning coaches, which I thought was really weird. And I'm really happy, you know, with the work from people like you and a bunch of other people around the world doing, you know, great work in terms of actually coaching athletes, you know, where, be it in the gym or on the court or on the field. I think it's awesome. And I think it's been a really good kind of development of the field, and it's great to see, and it's been awesome to hear your story.
Well, I
Sure.
appreciate it, Scott. You know, and again, you know, like I say, the opportunity to work with coaches like you and seeing, you know, when it comes down to it, like we're nothing without the athletes. You know, we don't
Mm-hmm.
have jobs there, and oftentimes I think that you know, just because we're the ones telling them what to do, no, it's a two-way street, and I think more and more, like the more coaches I've had the opportunity to mentor, the more that I've seen it's gone from that, you know, drill sergeant
Yeah.
NCAA football, you know, as long as I yell loud enough, you know, I'm going to get the results, to seeing that mixture of the art and science. And so, you know, things that you're doing, things that, you know, whether it's Dana, whether it's, you know, all of these amazing coaches, you know, I think, I think we're really in a good place of where the profession is going. And, you know, even though I'm sort of veering off in a different direction, it's one of those things where I could be happier of where I see the career going. So yeah, I got to give credit to you and everybody else that I get to connect with, because yeah, you guys and girls are doing an amazing job. So yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you very much for the chat, Matt. And I hope we can, you know, when all this is over, I'm sure I'll be out, you know, out west, and hopefully we can connect if you're still around, whenever that is.
Absolutely, man. That'd be my pleasure. And yeah, thank you. And yeah, I saw a couple names coming up that I haven't seen in a while. So if you happen to still be on there, I'll just say hello and goodbye. But yeah, thanks, Scott. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no worries. This was great. Thanks a lot,
All
Matt.
right, buddy. Take care.
Talk to you later. Bye.